secret audio tape, the possibility of a safeguard, and clues about not one but two missing people. There is a lot to go through in episode 3. I'm going to analyse each scene and then we're going to build some theories about what could be on the way next. As always, chapters below should you need them. For the 3rd time now, the episodes start in Jules' apartment taking her pills. This time, instead of spitting them out in the kitchen sink, she walks her way to the bathroom and spits them out there. In the last episode, we saw that she had a conversation with Jerry. He kind of feels sorry for her, they're treating her like a prisoner, and she asks for more space because today she's going to walk the silo alone. The nurse has ratted out Jules, and now Camille knows that Jules wasn't taking her pills. In the meantime, she sent a note to Shirley because she wants to know more about Lukas Kyle. Jules was looking for Sheriff Billings, but she turns up at the apartment and Kathleen is there. Jules couldn't care less about the raid, she just wants to know where Lukas Kyle is, and Kathleen explains that she doesn't know where Kyle is and that Kyle is presumed dead. Patrick Kennedy has been looking for him for ages and there's still no sign of him. Very importantly here, Juliette learns that Sims threatened Lukas with a gun. Sims broke in the apartment threatening Lukas because he wanted to know more about why Bernard didn't pick him as his shadow. Camille is slowly losing her patience with the algorithm. She now knows that Jules isn't taking her pills, but she's trying to explain how they can use this to their advantage. Let Jules go on a hunt for Lukas Kyle, she won't be able to find him, they'll get confirmation that Lukas Kyle is dead, and also they might be able to lure out Patrick Kennedy. The algorithm can not only tell that Camille is trying to manipulate it, it then does the same to her. It says that the choice remains solely in your hands, but the algorithm all the while is pushing for the entire silo to have a memory wipe. This entire episode has themes of identity, memory, and who you are as individuals. Camille is beginning to sense this and she doesn't want to go through with mass memory suppression. Billings visits Orla's parents, explaining that he's looking for her and that he'll do everything he can to find her. What we then learn is this boyfriend that we met at the end of episode 1 may not be the good guy that we originally thought he was. He was also with the previous shadow of Supply, which we know was Harwood's daughter. So right now we have Harwood's daughter that is nowhere to be seen and still no sign of Orla. Jules follows up on Sims. He grabs hold of her, walks her away from Anthony because of course the last time Anthony saw Jules she was waving a gun around their apartment. It's a very emotional moment where he says, do you have any idea essentially what it's like for my son to have that memory of how scared you made him? And she sort of says, well at least he has memory. She says, I don't even remember having a dad. And you can see this sort of moment where he starts to soften and sort of unravel. And you can see him, I suppose, as a father starting to put the pieces together of what it would be like for your own child to not even remember you. Of course, she wants nothing to do with Anthony. She just wants to know more about Lukas Kyle. And he says, I don't know anything about Lukas Kyle. She walks off to head somewhere else, but you can see the cogs are starting to turn for Sims. There's a few different cutscenes. We see the outsiders discussing that if Jules is looking for Lukas Kyle, then he must be alive. Jules wants to go below the gap, and Shirley basically confronts her, saying, what are you doing? Jules in that moment says, why did you ignore my note? Shirley tries to play it off and say, I didn't get your note, but the two of them have a little spat for about a minute or so. As much as I'm trying to like Shirley, she's really getting under my skin in this moment. We need her to help Jules. And she says, do you have any idea what it's like seeing your best friend not know who you are? And she said, do you have any idea what it's like not remembering your best friend? And she kind of, I think, puts things in perspective for Shirley. Taking things into her own hands, literally, she goes down the rope and makes her way down past the gap. It was kind of spooky for me. It was like seeing, you know, Season 2 Silo 17 Jules all over again. There's a brilliant scene here between Camille and Robert, and for me it shows parallels of Solo's parents in the other silo. And you can see how it's really starting to weigh them down. This decision making, they can't seem to kind of let it sit on their shoulders. She also at this point tells Rob that she's having the vitamin D plus brought up to be run through the water system. Neither of them want this to happen, but I don't think they see any other option, or at least Camille doesn't at this point in time. I'm sensing a little bit of a shift in mentality though from Robert Sims. Before Juliette walked away, he wanted to try and say something to her, but she wouldn't listen. Instead of taking Anthony straight back to school, he decides to spend the morning with him. I think in the coming episodes we're going to see something different from Robert Sims. I'm not even quite sure what it is at this point, but I feel that there is a change within his core narrative. She says, you know, when I need you to, like we promised, we need to do whatever we can to protect Anthony, and so that he can be the generation that makes it out of here alive. And it is just heartbreaking, especially when it's flicking between the before times and now you're seeing us, our civilization, our time period, with all this privilege of being able to go outside, to explore the world, and then it cuts to this. Because as an individual, I don't know what I would do in this situation. The truth is, I would cope no better than anyone in here, probably even Shirley. It's annoying and frustrating when you see characters make the wrong decisions or wrong choices, but at the end of the day, we would probably be exactly the same as they are. So, Jules and Knox go down to meet Matt Chambers, who was someone who worked in the mines at one point in time. Jules is inquiring, she's saying, if Lukas was in the mines and then he came out, what would he have learned? And Matt basically says to him he wouldn't have learned anything. He would have just been lucky enough that someone dragged him out of there and gave him a different job. Camille gets word that Jules went to speak to Matt, and when she looks into him, she realises that Matt worked in the mines. At that point, she basically initiates a strike. Send in a bunch of people to clear out rodents in the mines. At this point, Camille doesn't care. She knows that Jules thinks Lukas is in the mines, and she's going to do anything she can to flush him out. Jules, walking around with Knox, realises at this point she's being followed. But I don't think she knows at this point whether it's outsiders or somebody from Camille's team. It's making me wonder as well, is she going to start figuring out that she's being watched and followed in other areas? Is she going to start remembering the cameras behind the mirrors and other stuff that she's learned previously? Camille frantically runs to the vault. She's explaining to the algorithm that if Lukas Kyle at one point in time was Bernard's shadow, then he would have learnt about the other silos too. Which means Lukas would know why the mines can't dig so far out. If he is down there in the mines, what is he doing down there, and is he trying to make contact with another silo? Once the algorithm hears this, it explains to Camille that any silo-to-silo contact is prohibited, and this now may have to lead to a safeguard procedure, basically killing off all of Silo 18. She's hoping that this attack on the mines is going to lure out Lukas Kyle, and then she can deal with that and hopefully not have to do all these other things. This scene is genuinely horrific. Bunch of people in an enclosed space basically being gassed out by rat poison. All of them clambering, trying to get out through the gate with these alarms going off. It was absolutely horrific to watch. She sees somebody struggling and making the wrong decision here, gives them her mask. They, completely disoriented, push her, shove her up against a wall and run off. So she's now stuck in there with no ability to breathe. I don't know why she didn't try and open an extra locker and grab another mask. Plot devices, I suppose, who knows. But anyway, she's there coughing on the ground, needing help. And who shows up? Well, it's our boy Lukas. Yes, he's been hiding in the mines for over 3 months. He hasn't even come out to visit his mother in hospital. He carries her out, lays her on the ground, and at this point she wakes up and immediately recognises him. Unable to go back into the mines, now that Judicial are after him, he runs off into the silo. He stood there in a sort of storage cupboard with nothing but a mallet, waiting to be found, and who shows up? Well, it's 2 of the outsiders. Billings comes down to the mines to basically see what's going on. In that moment, they say that a body has been found that was unaccounted for, and it's Orla Kent. Jules, bless her, is never going to catch a break. She is laying back in the hospital, being given oxygen, and the nurse says it's not looking good. She simply says, bring Camille down. Camille will know what to do. But she has her own problems. She's in the vault talking to the algorithm again. The voice explains what she needs to do. Let Jules die and create the narrative of Jules being a hero by finding the fugitive, Lukas Kyle. But you can see within her face, Camille doesn't want to do that. The algorithm says to Camille, do you know why you got this job? She says, well, I'm assuming my training as a raider, or something of the sort. It says no. She's just essentially a very good liar. The reason Camille was picked over anyone else is because she's very good at deceiving people as and when she needs to. It brings up how during the rebellion she was playing both sides, manipulating her husband, and even when she had the opportunity to catch Jules and hand her in when Jules was threatening her in her apartment, she didn't do so, and the algorithm asks why. Now this bit's kind of creepy because Camille tries to come up with a lie. The problem is the algorithm can sense that she's trying to be deceptive by being able to measure the cortisol in her breath. Camille has to come clean and explain how she admired Juliette, but now she realises how big of a mistake that was, and that she now has a decision to make. Is she going to take out the most important puzzle piece of the silo, or is she going to wipe the entire memory of Silo 18 in the hopes of saving it? Now, our first scene of this episode in the before times is a very poignant one. Daniel is at a memorial, and the person who has died is a member of Charlotte's squadron. There, he speaks to the pilot's father, and we learn that he is a veteran. Remember, he learned from Helen and the notes that she took from Charlotte that all the comms were swapped out for previous models. This was before the mission had even started. Now, he doesn't know where it is, but he explains to Daniel it's highly likely that some of this recording could possibly be out there, somewhere on the internet, or even the dark web. There's two hidden details in this scene, one we're going to get to in a second. The first is that this man references something called Desert Storm. I'm going to give you a quick 60-second rundown on why this is so important. Operation Desert Storm was a United States military mission in 1991 where they went into Kuwait in the hopes of removing Iraqi forces. Now, the reason this is so poignant is because it was an absolute manslaughter. I have to be careful what I say here on YouTube, but for over 6 weeks, it was just aerial bombardment, just dropping bombs over and over and over on Iraqi defences. After that, at the end of February in 1991, there was a huge ground attack that lasted over 100 hours. We have real history that happened between the US and the Middle East being mentioned. And then, of course, we have the fictional history in the show, in Silo, where the US has had a dirty bomb dropped on it by Iran, and there is possible strikes, concerns, and a bunch of other issues with Charlotte's squadron that is related to this geographical area. Now, it's interesting here they're merging real US history with a fictional one. There is also another detail in this episode I'm going to go over in a minute where we may be able to try and work out exactly what year this is happening. Now, in this moment, 2 men walk in. One is described as the captain of the Nimitz. The other isn't given a name, but we've seen him not only once, but twice before. This is the man that Charlotte thought was following her on the train, and also the one that was watching her last episode when she was talking to Helen. Now, this was something I didn't notice, not only until after the reaction, but after I was editing the analysis vid for episode 2. I realised that this man here has shown up 3 individual times, and he's following these characters. Daniel explains everything he's just learned to Helen, and she has a plan. She knows someone that might be able to help. However, in that moment, her boss, who's at this point had enough of her, fires her right there and then on the spot. And as she looks around, we see the same man again that was just following Daniel. Is he something to do with her being fired, or is it just a coincidence he was there? At this point in time, we don't know. Her and Daniel are off to try and meet someone who could possibly provide them this audio. Helen, who's very smart, is beginning to put the pieces together. She basically says, do you not find it odd I start asking questions about Charlotte's memory loss and what happened, and now I'm out of a job? When they get there, they're met by someone who immediately, the minute I saw him, reminded me of George Watkins. They're asked to hand over their phone and then also Daniel's badge. This is basically a form of bait or payment, as he can make a copy of it, and if he needs to, get into very, very high access places posing as Daniel, I imagine, which is never a good sign. But he's desperate at this point, so he hands it over. Helen asks, well, what about this audio recording? And he says, what audio recording? You just needed to know it existed. I don't need to provide it to you. But then a message pops up on the screen. Daniel, pleading with him at this point, explains how his sister was one of the members of the squadron. In the end, he gives in and lets them listen to the tape. We don't get to hear it, but both Helen and Daniel find it deeply disturbing. Now, what's very creepy is Helen says, what could take control like that? 4 pilots all going down. And Daniel, basically horrified, says, I don't know. I think the answers is in those messages on the computer. I'm going to finish my scene recaps and then I'm going to go over it in a minute. If you want to go through the chapters below and jump to it right now, it's Theory 1, Acoustic Crowd Control. Whilst Helen and Daniel are driving back, he says we need to get a copy of that tape. We need to go back to that guy. He says, the people I work for need to know, essentially need to know what was on that tape. And he says, not the shadowy creeps that finance campaigns. And she kind of says, no, I know. And you can see the two of them are kind of meeting in the middle. She doesn't want to get involved with all this government crap. She is someone who wants to reveal the truth to the people, but she's willing to work with him on this, I suppose in their minds for the greater good. The minute that they arrive, the door's been broken in and the entire place has been ransacked. At this point, the two of them have to surely realise that they're being followed and somebody is after exactly what they're after. So, this man is talking to Helen and Daniel. He receives a message from Upriser 724 that says, I MB tracked you. He then, slightly confused, goes back to his computer game and makes a move. Now, I'm not a chess player myself, but I did look into the game that he was playing on the screen. It seemed here that this guy possibly had a checkmate within 2 moves, and it was odd that a seemingly such a smart guy would have missed that. He seemed to have been distracted somehow. Somebody has wrote here, the computer that he was playing chess on also looked rather large, and I feel like he knew his facility was going to get raided soon. Interesting little detail there. The conversation is titled, The Abyss, Mass Whale Deaths, What Really Happened? The official story says scientists are investigating, but they've been investigating for decades and never tell us anything real. My guess, military testing. Has anyone got intel? Oh, it's military, no question, somebody answers. Then, Red Pill Fisher says, you're thinking too small. Sure, sonar could kill some whales, but not like this. What we're looking at is something bigger, HARP-style experiments. Then there's a reply underneath. I've seen chatter about this in another forum. Some guy claiming to be ex-Navy said they were testing acoustic crowd control tech underwater. Red Pill Fisher replies, the electromagnetic frequencies they pump into the atmosphere can destabilize entire ecosystems. Bet they were testing ocean floor resonance tech near those underwater volcanoes. That's why it happened so suddenly and why the official something, it's being hidden by this other conversation, unknown seismic activity. Kraken's Wrath, another user, chimes in and says, forget military tech, this has extraterrestrial written all over it. Think about it, the whales rely on echolocation to navigate. What if something else, like a craft or tech from out there, interfered with their signals? Remember those booms over the Atlantic last month? People called it atmospheric phenomena, but what if it was something entering or exiting our atmosphere? They're either testing us or clearing the oceans for their own use. Cypher 9 then links declassified sonar tests. This is what they don't want you to see. A leaked document from a 2004 experiment shows acoustic propagation tests somewhere near, and then it's too blurry and I can't quite see the name. It matches the location of these whale deaths almost exactly. Coincidence? I don't think so. Then a final user says, the Earth is reacting and humanity is the target. Look at the timing. Wars breaking out, economies collapsing, and now, something's being hidden by this other conversation, everything is connected. Now, although blurred, I assumed this said something along the lines of Reykjane or Reykjane Ridge, so I looked it up. Now, the Sirena experiment, Seismicity of the Northern Atlantic, was an international hydroacoustic monitoring campaign conducted from May 2002 to September 2003. It featured an array of autonomous hydrophones deployed in the deep ocean SOFAR channel to record low magnitude earthquakes. So 2 options here. The writers of Silo are either including these real-life historical events, like these acoustic propagation and desert storm, to kind of add to the narrative, or this has something to do with the fictional events that are going to lead to the Silo's developments. I can't really find much more information on this specifically, though it has only for me been about 24-48 hours since the episode came out. If you know anything about it, I want you to leave a comment below. If there's anything to do with this that I have missed, please do let me know below. I'd love to know if there's any specific details in this that could help us with what could be happening in the rest of season 3. Now, I told you a few minutes ago that there was a specific detail that allowed us to work out when the before times was actually happening. When Helen and Daniel are driving in the car, there is a song playing in the background. The song is by Florence and the Machine, and it is titled Ship to Wreck. This is a very, very well picked song by the makers of Silo because the opening lyrics are, I don't touch the sleeping pills, they mess with my head. Now, this song was officially released on the 9th of April 2015. As Helen and Daniel are listening to this song in the car, it means the date of the before times, where we're currently watching them, has to be after April 2015. This links up perfectly with the other information we've been provided in this episode. We know they're referring to experiments that took place in 2004 with the acoustic propagation, and we've heard about that veteran's father who served during Desert Storm, which was way back in '91. We still don't know when these events are going to occur that is going to cause cause the silos to be created. All we know is it must happen sometime after the spring of 2015. So for us in our timeline, we know that Jules and the rest of the gang are existing sometime after 2367. Alright, another detail of course that I've already been over with this episode is this mysterious man showing up time after time. We saw him first in episode 1, this was somebody that Charlotte thought was following her, and now we know that she's right. We know that he is there at the facility watching over Charlotte, and now he's watching over Helen and Daniel too. The question I have on my mind right now, and I'm afraid I don't think I can truly give you an answer, but it's who on earth is he? He is clearly somebody who wants this information about the crash of Charlotte's squadron to not get out, and he seems to be someone who's willing to do anything in order to stop that. It's interesting, within this episode we didn't see any more of Victor and we didn't see any more of Charlotte. Given that Victor works at the facility, I'm wondering if he would know who this man is, or if at some point we're going to see them together, maybe with Charlotte again. My final theory, and something that I want to discuss, is about the algorithm itself. There is something eerily human about this algorithmic voice. How on earth does it pick up on the cortisol in her breath when she is trying to be deceptive? How does it have the capacity to take on information, make what it calls an analytical decision about it, when really it feels a very emotional decision? And then it goes on to explain that to Camille and tries to convince her to do it and play out these events. It was something that stood out to me last episode as well, when we first met Victor. I'm wondering if this voice of the algorithm is someone we've already heard before. My initial thought during episode 1 is maybe this is just Daniel's voice, but older and more distorted. Then we met Victor and I wondered if it was him, considering that this algorithm has a similar mentality to Victor. This idea that people are the memories that they develop of themselves, and that in order to create control, or a sense of control, all you have to do is regulate how people perceive themselves. I'm wondering if this algorithmic voice is somebody we have already seen and heard, but we're just not putting the pieces together yet. If this is possibly the preserved voice of one of the founders, have we already met one of the founders, and is it one of the people that we've already seen? I think to me, like I said, there's something about this AI, this algorithm, that's eerily human, or at least it tries to pose itself as something that's human and not an algorithm. Camille is starting to catch on to that as well. She's not stupid. She's working out slowly but surely that this algorithm is manipulating her. And I think it's leading me to question, what is the point of the silos in general? Are these silos there to protect the people from an event, from a giant nuclear attack where the world has gone into a state of fallout and this is the last of humanity? Well, let's think about this for a second. Charlotte supposedly had information that the dirty bomb that Iran supposedly dropped on the US, on DC, wasn't what they said it was. Well, how do we know there's not more to this big event that created the silos? How do we know that there's not more to the silos themselves? They seem to be, the silos, testing the people that live within it all the time, constantly trying to find the right way to run humanity. We're thinking these silos are bunkers. Are we sure they're not experiments on people? We know they're willing to experiment on them in many different ways, whether it be memory suppression or fertility. We've seen that all the way since season 1. How do we know these silos are for the benefit of people? That's just what the founders have been telling them. The people in the silos want to go outside. Is it when it's safe to go outside, or when they are safe enough to go back outside, when they have been controlled and conditioned enough to do so? I just want to do a little bit of character analysis before I wrap this video up. Like I said, there was a lot to go over. We've seen Lukas Kyle for the first time since season 2. He has been hiding in the mines, but what has he been doing down there? He doesn't have the capacity himself as an individual to dig to another silo. So has he just been laying low, or has he been secretly telling other people in there about what he has learnt? Would it be a case that other miners would know he's down there and would know who he is? Or has he been a complete individual fugitive? Has he simply been putting the pieces together himself, laying low in the hopes at some point he can get out and find the right person? And is that person going to be Juliette? Is it even going to be Patrick Kennedy? We've also learned, of course, that Orla Kent has been killed and that her body was down in the mines. Was she killed somewhere else in the silo and her body was placed in the mines? Or is the killer directly linked to Mines itself. Another interesting development for me here in this episode is Robert Sims. He's a character I've had kind of a love-hate relationship with over the past couple of seasons. He's tired of following the pact and the rule books, and I think Camille is feeling the same as well. Are they willing to see Jules as an ally and not an enemy? And what are they willing to do to save a silo that doesn't involve losing their memory or losing their connection with their son? If there is anything else that I didn't notice in this episode or something that you want to discuss, please do comment it below. Of course, put things as a spoiler in the comments if you have read the books and you don't want the likes of me or other viewers clicking on it. But of course, share information, theorise, tell me what you think below, because I'd love to hear what you think is going to happen as this show goes forward. As always, thank you very, very much for watching. If you did enjoy it, the best thing to do is to give it a thumbs up, as it really helps me out. And what you can also do is hype the video. If you have the capacity to, there'll be a little hype button below, and this basically helps push me on the algorithm a little bit more and find new viewers. Do click subscribe and turn your notifications on, that way you won't miss next week's video, and I'll see you next time. Toodles!